Bags full of bloody children's clothes, a butcher's knife, bone fragments hidden behind a wall. Clay jars and bowls filled with fragments of bodies and organs, either preserved or still floating in clotted blood. A discovery found in Barcelona in 1912 could overshadow contemporary gore cinema. The list is not over yet. Lard made of human fat, children's hair, bottles of medicines, ointments and preparations prepared for sale, among them old books and notebooks with recipes. This terrible find may sound like the story of an evil witch living in a secluded hut, pushed to the margins of society. Meanwhile, this arsenal existed in an ordinary tenement house in the poor, densely populated district of Raval, in the 20th century, not in the deep Middle Ages. Everything belonged to only 43-year-old, quite attractive woman who was dubbed the Barcelona vampire by the press. But one should rather call her a bloody businesswoman. She ran a lucrative business in response to the needs of the rich Spanish society. Enriqueta Martí i Repolles was born in 1868 in the coastal town of Sant Feliu Llobregat in southern Catalonia. As a teenager, she nursed children, but quickly made a career in the world's oldest profession. She worked either in brothels or wherever there was a need. At the age of 27, she married the painter Joan Pajallo, but her marriage fell apart due to Enriqueta's infidelity and inconsistency. As Joan confessed, she liked men too much in places he didn't like. It's actually hard to say when Enriqueta had the idea to start a macabre business. She began to deal with child macabre business, black magic and healing at the same time. Sources confirm that she entered into deals with several people from high society who successfully covered her. In 1909, social and political tensions erupted in Barcelona, resulting in the so-called Tragic Week. Enriqueta was then arrested on suspicion of running a brothel, where she kept children between the ages of 3 and 14. During the police raid, one of the clients also came in, a young man from a very influential family. Enriqueta never stood trial. The case file was mysteriously lost. The second time around, the Barcelona witch was not so lucky. On February 27, 1912, Enriqueta was poured out by a neighbor who saw a girl with a shaved head in the window of apartment number 29 on Ponent Street, today Joaquim Costa. At that time, the whole district was looking for Teresita Guitart, the daughter of a very respected, though poor, family. A neighbor told a local mattress dealer about it, who immediately went to the police. After entering the apartment, the pretext was the suspicion of having chickens. The policemen found 2 girls who at first pretended to be Enriqueta's daughters, but after a while they admitted lying. One of them turned out to be the wanted Teresita and told the police about how she met her kidnapper on San Vicente Street, where she kidnapped her in a truly fairy tale style, tempted with sweets, and then hid her under her coat. In the apartment, she cut her hair and changed her name to Felicidad. She was physically abused and starved, eating only potatoes and old bread. The girls also testified that a boy named Pepito was with them. The second, named Angelita, accidentally suspected the boy had been slaughtered on the kitchen table. She then testified that she went back to bed and pretended to be asleep. Enriqueta was brought to trial, but no murder charges were brought against her. Kidnappings, forgery of public documents, yes, but no crimes. The evidence was found to be insufficient and everything was based on presumptions, although the testimony was shocking. According to one of them, the vampire from Barcelona, she kidnapped children and babies and murdered them, and then made potions from their remains, which she sold for large sums to rich townspeople. The blood, fat, hair, and bones of helpless victims were the basis of the tonics, liniments, and healing compresses that the wealthy bought to cure tuberculosis. Besides, not only tuberculosis, because venereal diseases were also treated and aging was prevented. The prosecutor was afraid that 2 important personalities would be involved in the case and, God forbid, they would have to be brought to justice. And the tentacles of the crime reached really high, supposedly even to King Alfonso XIII himself, who was supposed to buy blood preparations from Enriqueta and drink it as a remedy for a mysterious disease. On the other hand, a respected anthropologist and folklorist, Jonah Mards, a later UNESCO collaborator, was to obtain human bones from the vampire from Barcelona. Barons, doctors, lawyers, merchants, politicians, high-ranking officials, and cultural activists, Enriqueta's clients included the cream of society in Spain. Compromising coded letters were found with signatures from landlords, plus lists of names. It is hardly surprising that even court experts called to examine the remains quickly decided that they were definitely animal bones. Meanwhile, the press boomed out, the bones testify to barbaric crimes, and the ointments and medicines are evidence of medieval superstitions. The beginning of April 1912 was the perfect time to cover up the case of the Barcelona vampire. The Titanic was about to sink, and the eyes of the world turned to America. The influential and the rich breathed a sigh of relief. And Enriqueta, she was sentenced to just 11 months in prison. On May 12, 1913, she was found dead in one of the yards of the prison. She was brutally beaten, but the newspapers said she died of uterine cancer. Too many people cared about her silence. Palazzo Dario, or Cardario Palace, is one of the most terrifying places in Venice. It is said to be burdened with a curse that drives all its owners and those who live there to economic ruin and brutal death. The building was built between 1479 to 1487 by order of Giovanni Dario, Secretary of the Venetian Republic, as a dowry for his daughter Marietta, at the time engaged to Giacomo, a wealthy spice merchant. Shortly after marrying and moving into the palace, Marietta's husband is found dead in the street, stabbed to death by unknown people, possibly for unpaid debts. Marietta dies in 1505. Legend says that after these sad events, she committed suicide. The Venetians are shocked by the brutal deaths and begin to think there is a curse on the mansion. Cardario remains in the hands of the Barbaro family until the early 19th century, when Alessandro Barbaro, a descendant of Vincenzo's original owner, decides to sell it to an Armenian gem trader, Arbet Abdul, who quickly loses his wealth and dies after purchasing the building. The next owner is Radon Brown, and guess what? He dies a mysterious death in Cardario, along with his lover. The next owner of the palace was also not lucky. Charles Briggs, an American millionaire, flees the United States on charges of homosexuality. He lived in Cardario for several years with his lover, until 1962, when the Italian magistrate announced to him that although there are no laws against homosexuality in Italy, he is an unwanted person in Italy. Briggs is forced to put Cardario up for sale. He escapes to Mexico, where his lover commits suicide. Philip Giordano Lanze is less fortunate than his predecessor. He buys Cardario in the 1970s and is soon killed by his boyfriend, who also dies violently. It's not over yet. In the early 1980s, the building is bought by a Venetian entrepreneur, Fabrizio Ferrari. He lives there with his sister Nicoletta. He soon goes bankrupt and his sister dies in a car accident. In the 90s, the famous businessman Raul Gardini buys this palace for his daughter. Immediately after that, he loses most of his wealth and commits suicide by shooting himself in the head. Even Woody Allen thought about buying this palace in 2000, but wisely changed his mind when he found out about all these tragic events. Do you think it's over? Not yet. In 2002, bassist John Entwistle suffers a heart attack a week after renting the palace. It is still uncertain if the house has anything to do with these tragedies, but some argue that the sentence carved at the entrance, Urbis Genio Joannes Darius, means John Darius City Genius, plays a role in the history of the house, as it can also be read as anagram, sub ruina insidiosa genero, which means I bring treacherous ruins to those who live under this roof. Today Cardario is uninhabited. It is currently owned by a large US multinational, but I hear it is up for sale. If you're interested and don't believe in haunted palaces, why not make an offer?